I'm Amber Roberts, a 17-year-old media student intent on discovering what society was like from my parents' generation to mine. Join me as I discover what life was like 50 years ago.
2, 1, 2, 3.
The year 1966 is synonymous with Beatlemania, with thousands of fans worldwide desperate to see the Fab Four from Liverpool. Selling around 1 billion records worldwide, the Beatles are, to this day, the best-selling band in history. The Beatles were seen as the first breakthrough in popular music since the Second World War, sparking the British invasion of the US and innovating the modern music video. Imitation of their clothing and especially their hairstyles had a global impact on fashion, and as icons of 1960s counterculture, their beliefs fueled movements such as women's rights and gay liberation. 1966 saw the last ever live performance from the Beatles, as well as extreme controversy over lead singer John Lennon's statement that the band was more popular than Jesus.
That we meant more to kids than Jesus did.
It wasn't just the Beatles that made a breakthrough in British music, with bands such as The Who and the Rolling Stones selling hundreds of millions of records worldwide and revolutionising rock music. The bands also had an impact on fashion from their earliest days, with their embrace of pop art and the use of Union Jack for clothing. Fast forward to 2016 and the Beatles are still incredibly popular, selling millions of records even after the tragic death of band members John Lennon and George Harrison. However, the recent years have seen a rise in boy bands, such as One Direction and the subsequent fangirl culture. Recently, there has been no significant advances in pop music, with most artists conforming to the same general standard. Although, the British music industry is still booming, with artists such as Adele and Sam Smith being the face of current feminist and LGBT acceptance in the industry.
I want to thank the man who this record is about, who I fell in love with last year. Thank you so much for breaking my heart, because you got me 4 Grammys.
Now, the music charts are vastly made up of pop and indie artists, with genres such as metal and rock staying out of mainstream attention. Recent years have also seen a surge in dance and party music, with much of the youth favouring catchy beats to meaningful lyrics. I've come to Abingdon and Whitney College to meet with members of the music department and find out what direction they think modern music is going in, and just how much the music industry has evolved in the past 50 years. In 1966, John Lennon was renowned for saying he was more popular than Jesus, and the Beatles were more popular than Jesus. I was wondering what your opinion on that statement is.
It's certainly an interesting statement, isn't it? I mean, the very first thing that comes to mind is it's really interesting hearing music compared to religion. Quite often, particularly in Britain, I hear kind of football's almost compared to religion in terms of congregating together, lots of people, kind of singing together and that kind of thing. So I suppose one element of that statement is it does make it sound like he's saying music is as important as religion. And as far as our history goes with music, it certainly has been a big influential part in all cultures in the world, not just the West, but everywhere.
So in terms of Beatlemania then, we now have kind of fangirls and that kind of culture surrounding One Direction, and they're always being compared to the Beatles being the best kind of British band around now, and I was wondering how you feel about that comment.
Well, I guess that the modern music is based around a lot of spin and a lot of hype. Not saying there wasn't much of the Beatles, but they were just, everyone was crazy for the songs, and there wasn't the same kind of marketing level that there is today. So marketing comes above the actual band and the quality of the music a lot of the time. And as for One Direction, I think the only way to work out whether they're going to be as big as the Beatles is only time will tell. But I think it's the songwriting that has lasted, and people are still singing the Beatles songs, and they've been interpreted in so many different ways. I'm not sure that One Direction's music is going to last as long as it'll be interpreted in the same degree.
And as the Beatles were very, very popular in 1966, and in 2016 we have One Direction. How do you feel about the comparison of One Direction to the Beatles' popularity?
Well, if you speak to fans of, kind of hardcore Beatles fans, or possibly even hardcore One Direction fans, they can see how they might be insulted by the thought that there's another artist out there that could potentially compare to their favourite. But stepping back from any personal preference, I think it makes sense that comparison in terms of the Beatlemania, the equivalent to One Direction, how, you know, we're not just talking about a band that's well known, but they're very well known, they're globally well known, they're extremely well marketed by their record label, one of those rare artists that's actually making money out of recorded music.
And I was wondering as well, your opinion on kind of how music has come along from that period and from the 60s until now, and how it's completely taken almost a U-turn into the fact that back then it was more kind of, you have two kind of genres predominantly in the charts, whereas now you've got mostly the kind of generic stuff that's always kind of being produced in the charts, and there's not a lot of diversity.
I don't know. I think it's I think when the Beatles were coming out, they were really sort of trailblazing. But there was a lot of different music. There was, in the charts at the time, there was classical and comedy music, and country and western, and lots of older R&B. And so there was I suppose a certain variety of music. Nowadays, I guess it's the charts have been in recent years more diverse, but I think more recently, because of the way music is being consumed, a lot of genres are just not generating chart sales as such. A lot of the time now, the music is a live music scene, and the CD recording music is just to support the live music scene, because that's where all the money is. It seems a strange way around, but it's back to front to what it used to be. It used to be the concerts promoted the album sales. Now the album sales are just a byproduct of what the live music is doing, because that's where all the money is.
The 1960s was a decade that broke many fashion traditions, with music and fashion combining to mirror the social movements of the time. The hippie subculture had a strong influence on women's clothing, seeing a surge in psychedelic prints, bell-bottom jeans and tie-dye, and batik clothing. At the same time, the infamous miniskirt was first popularised, along with false eyelashes and extravagant hairstyles, such as the beehive. The London modernists, or mods, were shaping and defining popular fashion for young British men and women, with tailor-made suits, monochromatic prints and motor scooters. The other leading fashion group were the rockers, who were renowned for wearing black leather jackets with greased hair and predominantly rode motorbikes. The conflicting youth-oriented subcultures sparked rivalry and a moral panic concerning British youths. Today, fashion has taken a U-turn, with many people wearing similar clothing styles and conforming to the latest fashion trends. Mod fashion influenced today's popularity of slim-fitted trousers for men and miniskirts for women, and there has been an increase in demand of clothing such as flannel shirts, denim jackets and oversized coats. The current British fashion industry is worth an estimated £25 billion. British fashion has become prominent enough to put London on the map as one of 4 fashion capitals. In society, there is still a variety of fashion groups, though they are not as prominent as the groups were in 1966. They also feel less inclined to express themselves through the clothing they choose to wear. 1966 is often credited the year the decade exploded, and pride in nationality was at an all-time high. The youth in 1966 were ever evolving, with views on social injustice being challenged through media outlets. For example, the movie Alfie was a staple movie of the year, which broadened people's views on topics such as sex and abortion, taboos of the time. England won the Football World Cup for the first and only time, and social inequalities were being addressed and tackled by the Labour government, led by Harold Wilson. The civil rights movement was a leading factor in the progress for British society. Unemployment rates rose as British industry began to dwindle, with the country growing in dependency on imported goods. Similarly, 2016 has brought the highest unemployment rates yet, with British companies being sold overseas, but the demand for British goods is higher as British people want their products locally sourced. Social injustice is still a prominent issue in today's society, with mass generalizations of minority groups. For example, immigration, Islamophobia, and LGBT prejudices. Currently, Britain is under a Conservative government led by David Cameron, who has policies mainly focused on the economics of the country.
We are taking, and will continue to take, the difficult decisions necessary, controlling welfare to reward work, pursuing multinationals so they pay their taxes, making government more efficient, saving £1 for every £100 the government spends for 2 years, and through the Parliament we will make sure of all these things.
And making government cuts to balance out government debt. To conclude this documentary, we have explored the change in society, fashion and music. As an outcome of this, we have discovered that although technology has developed and society has shifted, many issues and aspects are still significant in today's society. In comparison, many ways of life are similar, despite being much more positive and accepting